Segecic, he's going to shoot from here, and he'll score! Segecic! It's a lovely effort from the Australian, and Bishop saved, Segecic scores! Portsmouth lead! Swift will hit one from here, and he doesn't hit it well. It's still there for Segecic, he'll hit one well! He'll score! The Australian off the bench!
Sega, good to see you, mate. How's the injury? Any planned date of return yet? And what's the exact nature of what you've done?
Yeah, so obviously the Coventry game went down, and it was a grade 3 on the ATFL ligament. So yeah, it's going really well. I'm ahead of schedule, to be fair. So it's it's feeling strong, it's feeling good. I've done a bit of training today with the ball and a bit of striking, which was good for the first time in a while. And yeah, looking to be back after the international break.
Up until that point, you'd done really well for Portsmouth, 3 goals in 11 games. You seem to have taken to the Championship quite well. Do you think it's a league that suits your style of play?
Yeah, to be fair, I think a lot of people, when I first chose to come to England and the Championship, all said, I don't think it was the right decision. You're small, the Championship's so physical, and yeah, I think for me, I just wanted to prove a point and prove everyone wrong. And I feel like, if you're a good footballer, no matter what league and where you're playing, you can make yourself effective and useful, and I think I've been doing that, and yeah, I look forward to continuing to do it when I get back.
And what's the biggest difference between playing in the A-League and playing in the Championship?
Obviously, the first difference is you're playing every 3 days. I think the amount of games is obviously the biggest difference, and the intensity, and yeah, I think like everyone says, it's probably the most physical league and physically demanding league in the world, almost, some people could say. So yeah, it's definitely, I feel like the pace of the game, the physicality, and having to back it up every 3 days. I think that's the difference, the biggest difference.
And does it take a while for your body to adjust to that? I know obviously you've got some Australian colleagues at Portsmouth who've struggled with injuries as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's different. You come back and not many players are used to even playing in the cold. In Australia, you don't really play, in that, kind of weather, and it takes a different toll on your body and getting used to and stuff. So, yeah, I feel like it's one thing to get used to, and, you need to build it up slowly. And I think, the club's done, really well for me. Obviously, my injury wasn't, it wasn't a, overloading situation. It was more just unlucky. So I feel like the club's done really well to introduce me into the, the new setting and new league well, and obviously I hit the ground running, which helps. And yeah, I've been really lucky with injuries and stuff, so up until this point it's all been really good.
Now, we talked briefly about the A-League. Of course, you left Sydney FC during the off-season to return to Europe. Was that a smooth transition, and did Sydney make an offer to try and make you stay?
Yeah, Sydney did obviously try and keep me, obviously for a few reasons. They would probably thinking they could get a bigger transfer, and obviously I was coming off contract, so it was the nature of them to try and either re-sign me to sell me or re-sign me to keep me for another season. Obviously the World Cup coming, I think they would have loved to keep me for one more season, do as well as I did again, and then make the World Cup squad, and they could make a lot of money off the back of it. But I feel like for me, I was ready to go overseas and make the move, and as much as Sydney tried, I feel like I thought it was time for me to go abroad and take a new challenge on.
Were there other clubs, so you don't have to tell us the names of the clubs, but were there other clubs, other leagues that were interested? And if so, why did you choose this country, this club?
Yeah, honestly, I had a lot of phone calls with a lot of different clubs, a lot of different countries, leagues and everything. And I just felt like, the system, and I feel like me, I've never really got to play in a professional level at that number 10 and have that freedom, and I feel like speaking to Portsmouth, the gaffer and all the staff, and the way that they saw me play in their system, and the way they thought they could get the best out of me, I thought was a prime example. And yeah, I just feel like when you have a few meetings and speak with people, I think you just know what feels right. And to be fair, a lot of people did say I don't think the Championship, and obviously I got a lot of people that I speak to, and they're all saying, oh, Championship, I don't think it's the right move. It's I don't think it's your style and that. And to be fair, I just wanted to prove everyone wrong and take that challenge on, and I think I've been doing pretty well.
Now, this is, of course, your second stint in Europe. You had a year with Dordrecht on loan in the Netherlands. The numbers look decent, 5 goals in 27 games, but you and I had a coffee a few weeks ago, and you were telling me that life off the pitch there wasn't quite so straightforward. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, obviously it was the first time for me ever, living abroad, first time. And I was obviously 18, 19 years old, and, you've never really lived on your own, having to, deal with bills, cooking, cleaning. There's a lot more stuff that goes on when you're not living at home that you got to, think of and take care of. And, obviously it was my first stint, so I had to make sure that, I didn't really know a lot of things, and different language, so it was hard for me to go and sort a lot of things out. So yeah, I think it was obviously a massive challenge, and then the football, obviously, I think life off the pitch is just as important as on, and that's what makes you play at your best. And yeah, I learnt a lot that year, and it was definitely a year where I thought, wow, like this is the real deal. Moving overseas, you got no family, no one to help you, no one to support you in, and I know why you're there, and you got to do everything on your own. And then, if you have a bad game, you got to go home, and, no one's there, and you got to, deal with it yourself. And then next thing you know, you got to cook dinner, you got bills, you got everything to sort out. And, being a young lad, I think it's where I, probably grew up the most and learnt the most, even just, out of life and everything apart from football as well. And I feel like coming back to the A-League, it was so easy and comfortable living at home. And I feel like now I know what the challenge is, to come back over here. So I thought I was ready.
And because you were on loan at Dordrecht, you were still on your Sydney FC wages, is that correct? So that was a struggle as well.
Yeah, of course. Not many people know the young boys moving overseas, and I was still pretty much a kid at the time, and having to you got to make sure that you can afford your bills, and they're not doubling, or even I didn't even have a car, so I was literally, it was minus degrees, freezing, raining, and I was riding my bike to training if a few of the boys couldn't take me. So it was definitely a massive challenge, and I think not many people say that. They think, oh, footballer moving overseas, it's such a good life, and they don't know the difficulties of it. I was moving over there by myself, had to find my own place, make sure you're eating right, doing well, otherwise you get injuries and things like that. There was no one really to make sure you're doing everything. And then obviously it started to get freezing cold, rainy, and you're riding a bike to training, and it's a massive life lesson, and I feel like it was a good year for me to really see what it's like, and build your character and mental.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you, and again we spoke about this when we had a coffee a couple of weeks ago, which is something I didn't know, that Michael Owen has played a big part in your story and your move to Europe, the famous Liverpool and England striker. What's all that about? Yeah,
so obviously a big part on that was also Mark Robinson. We had a camp with the Croatian national team when I was under 17s, and then obviously Mark Robinson was there, and they were walking past, and my dad was like, oh, I really know this guy. And then obviously it was Mark Robinson, and we knew each other because me and his son used to verse each other, and stuff like that. So then they just had a general chat, and then obviously Mark was working at Man City at the time, and then I literally got back to Australia, and one morning we were going to get breakfast, me and my dad, and we got a message saying, yeah, would you want Michael Owen to take care of you? And then then that was how it happened. So then obviously I came to England, I had a few trials with clubs. It was during COVID, so it was a really awkward time, going on trial to clubs, and to be fair, it was really difficult with having to do all this travel to and from each club, and it was COVID. So and then obviously I came back because obviously the UK went out of the EU, so my Croatian passport wasn't really valid. So then I came back to Australia, and then we applied for the UK work permits, and then we ended up actually getting them. So that's how I'm here playing on that right now.
And you stay in touch with Michael Owen?
Yeah, to be fair, I sent him a message when I first came over saying thank you, who would have thought 4 years later down the line that, something he's done for me has, helped me a lot with this move and things like that. And he got back to me saying, yeah, I'm happy for you and congratulations on everything. So yeah, he's a genuine, really good guy, and I feel like a footballer you can learn a lot about. And I feel like we're very similar, small, left-footed, playing in England. So it was someone I could really learn a lot from.
Do you ever send him a text message saying, look, I'm in this situation, what should I do?
Not really, to be fair. I think it was more when obviously he was my agent a few years back, so it was more when he was, looking after me a lot more. It was a lot more chats and things like that. But obviously now it's just, like an old friend, just a message here and there that when I think he's too busy and, enjoying his other life.
Now, Mark Robertson is part of your extended family, but your immediate family, of course, I'm sure are very proud of you. Have they been over to watch you yet from Australia?
They have. They came over as soon as I came over at the start. About a week or two in to watch the first few games when the season started, and obviously I scored every game they were here, so it was good for them to come and hit the ground running. I think they were happy that I came in such a, like I said, a hard league, and somewhere my dad didn't think it's hard. You don't perform, you come to a new club, you don't perform, and then it's hard to win the fans over, and I think first impressions is the most important. And they was happy for me to play well, get a few goals, and for the fans to love me, and for him to see me doing well and loving it here as well. Because I think as parents, the most important thing is how your son's doing, overseas living by himself, and yeah, they saw I was really happy and doing well.
Hard to win the fans over, but you were telling me it's sometimes hard to win your dad over because he's both your biggest fan, but also your most vocal critic, yeah?
Yeah, he's very old school. Even, when I was younger and I didn't have the best game, it was wake up, even if we had a game Sunday and, we had training Monday, it was 6 a.m. in the truck to work. So I either had to pick, was it go to school for a few hours or go to work with him for a few hours. So no, but yeah, he's always, he's waiting there after a game if I haven't had the best game and, the game's on there ready, I'm just ready to get smashed and I bet about how bad I was, or, it's never the positives, because he always says, if we're sitting here listening to the positives, it'll take a while, the negatives aren't that long, but he still makes it long.
Okay. And you were telling me also that whilst you were playing at Sydney FC, you were still working with your dad as well.
Yeah, like I said, he's really old school, so obviously it was tough for me to go to school and stuff like that. Obviously when I was so young and had the contract, and we would train a few hours in the morning, and then we had the afternoon free, and of course by chance my dad has a job site up the road from where we would train, and obviously I didn't have my license, so he was always dropping me off at training and having to come pick me back up and stuff. So yeah, and then obviously I had to go work with him, and yeah, he just wanted to teach me what it's like, for normal people. So I would always train in the morning, and then if in the afternoon have to go, work with him and, lift cupboards above my head and, live a normal life as well as being a footballer when I was young.
The glamour of football, eh? So we mentioned the Aussie contingent at Portsmouth. Hayden Matthews, Tommy Waddingham, Jacob Farrell, they're all here at Fratton Park. Does that make things easier for you, and do you all hang around together, or is it not quite like that?
Definitely. I feel like it makes it a lot easier. Obviously, as footballers, you have a lot of spare time and free time, and yeah, I feel like for us, to be fair, we're really close, and we always go, for dinners, coffees, hang out, and just give each other company. I think it's really important, off the pitch, to clear your mind and just have some company, and obviously it feels like home for us, so it definitely helps a lot.
Internationally, you got your first call up for the Socceroos in August against New Zealand, although you didn't play. You then were left out of the next camp, and you've not yet made your debut for the national team. Are you a bit disappointed that that's not happened as yet?
Yeah, of course, I would have loved to make my debut for the national team while I was there, but yeah, obviously that's, it's not up to me to put myself on. Obviously it's up to the, the coach to, decide when the time's right, or, when he thinks I deserve it, or, based on the game really. And yeah, obviously I would have loved to make my debut, but I feel like, yeah, the only thing I can do is, keep performing well at club level and, get back in that camp and, make my debut.
You have the option of Croatia as well, of course, due to your heritage. Big talking point in Australia at the moment, has been for a long time, to be fair. Have you had any contact from them of late, and if so, would you consider it?
Yeah, there's obviously been contact, I think, since I moved over, playing in, Championship, it's a massive league, and yeah, there's obviously been contact of me going, to play for them, but like I said, I've played for Australia since the age of 15, so to be able to go through every single age group and play for the Socceroos and go to a World Cup, I wouldn't have went to the camp if I didn't feel like it was right. So yeah, I definitely feel like Australia is, if I can make that World Cup squad and play for Australia, I think it'd be, more sense. Obviously I've lived in Australia my whole life. It would still be nice to play for Croatia, but I feel like if, which I did pick Australia, and to go there and play at a World Cup, I think would be a dream.
Just a couple more before we finish. Talking of the international stage, I'm fascinated to hear about this match that you played for the ASEAN All-Stars before you came to Portsmouth, in front of 72,000 against Manchester United. What was all that about?
To be fair, honestly, I had no idea about it. We just got a message saying, to be fair, Sydney FC got an email first saying you've been picked in the Asian All-Stars team, and I was thinking like, what's going on here? And then there was no really information about it and stuff, and then yeah, a week later I get a message saying, here's your flights and hotel details and stuff, and I'm thinking, maybe it's actually possible happening. And then yeah, obviously it happened really quick. I think within like a week we had our flights details and stuff, and obviously at the time I wasn't really, we were off season, so I wasn't, still had to stay fit waiting up to the game, and then obviously went over there and had the game, and yeah, it was amazing. To be fair, I didn't think they were going to bring their strongest squad, which they still brought and played, probably their strongest team, and all of them still got on the pitch, so to be able to play against them I think was unbelievable, and obviously winning the game, which no one thought we would have, and to get the assist was really good.
Whose shirt did you get?
I got Luke Shaw's shirt. I think it was all the boys were running to get, everyone's shirt, so it was just luck of the draw.
Final one, do you keep an eye on what's happening back in Australia with the A-League, at Sydney FC of course in particular? What have you made of their start to the season?
Yeah, of course. To be fair, I think the time for us to watch games is perfect. You know, they're morning, 9, 10 o'clock. So normally when we have a game in the afternoon, you know, I can wake up, have my breakfast, watch the A-League a bit, and you know, I think it's a perfect time to still keep tabs on and watch the FC play. And yeah, I think, you know, they've been doing really well, and yeah, I think now they're second. So I think they've had a great start, and you can see the few young boys that I've played with. You know, I think like Reece Yuli and things like that. We played together at 11 years old. So to see him go abroad and come back and, you know, been doing well, it's good to see.
Is he the next one to come back overseas?
Yeah, hopefully, you know, for him, I think it'll be good. I think, you know, it's good to come back, get some game time, men's football, and, you know, to do exactly I feel like the, you know, moves I've done, to go overseas, get some game time, come back and prove a point, and then, you know, take the challenge on again.
Good to see you, Sega. Thanks for talking to us.
No worries, cheers, thanks for having me.